Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Welcome back, adventurers. We are here today with our third magic-related knowledge skill, Occultism. Occultism is focused on dealing with supernatural creatures, mysticism, and ancient cultures. There are 1 untrained and 3 trained actions available with Occultism at level 1. As always, there are plenty of skill feats to build on them or even offer us new actions. So let's go ahead and dive in and see how to use Occultism with intelligence to get things done. Starting off with our 1 untrained action, it's Recall Knowledge. We've talked about this a lot. You're going to be gaining information about creatures, aspects of the world, objects. In this case, it'll be things like the astral plane and ethereal planes. There's a whole bunch of creatures, but to be specific, things like oozes and aberrations will fall in this category, but there are a good number of creatures that will fall in here. Kind of depends on the campaign how useful Recall Knowledge might fit in, though. Okay, don't want to dwell on things we've talked about a lot, so let's get into the trained actions. We have Identify Magic, again, one we've talked about in the past. This lets you identify a spell or other forms of magic of the Occultism tradition specifically. Learn a spell, again, something we've talked about before. This lets you learn Occultism spells and add it to your spellbook or familiar or repertoire for a class that's using Occultism for its spellcasting. So witches, for instance, can have Occultism that they're going to add to their familiar. We've got various classes that do actually use Occultism for the primary magic that they use. Sorcerer's another good example that's got all sorts of them. And then, of course, bards, this is just what they do. And finally, Decipher Writing. This is a unique trained action. Takes 1 minute per page or 1 hour per cipher, if you're trying to decipher a cipher. Decipher texts from occultist sources. That's what you're going to do with this. Or about topics that you would associate with that skill. You might be asked to make a skill check to go along with this if it's particularly challenging, but generally speaking, you're deciphering things that the rest of the group who doesn't really have Occultism can understand. They just can't understand these, right? This is a challenge for them. It could be things written in code that only those who really understand aberrations or the ethereal planes might understand. Whatever it is, this is something unique though, and it's kind of cool because sometimes, it provides a puzzle aspect for the GM to utilize, and it gives you something special to do as a player to say, oh yeah, I can read that. I can help point out something that, sure, we probably could have gotten to eventually, but I can give us a different direction to go. So don't sleep on Decipher Writing. I think there's some cool out-of-combat options of what to do with this. So, wanted to be real quick. Again, of the 4 actions, only 1 was unique, so got through those pretty quick here. We can already see that, like the other knowledge skills, there are things you can do with Occultism, both in combat and out of combat. But let's get into the skill feats, because they might offer us even different things. Kicking off with Crystal Healing. Now, this is uncommon. It's level 1, requires trained. If you're holding the appropriate amount of gems, so you're holding gemstones for this one, you can use them with Occultism to attempt to treat disease or treat poison. At higher proficiency, and with more experience, more costly gems, you'll be able to get bonuses to these checks. So remember, treat poison, this is 1 action in combat. So this is a cool way to do that without having the medicine skill. Treat diseases out of combat. So just remember, you have to have gems to do this. It explains what you need as far as the gems cost goes, but kind of a unique way to play some healing. Deceptive Worship, level 1, trained. You can use Occultism to impersonate being a worshiper of a certain faith. Now, you can't use it to pretend to be a certain worshiper, like I can't be Jim the cleric here, but you're going to be able to use Occultism to deceive people to at least treat you as if you're part of the cult, whereas deception would be needed to be a certain cultist. But still, very interesting if you want to kind of get in there without charisma, right? You're trying to infiltrate without using charisma, instead you're an intelligence player. Oddity Identification. Level 1, trained. You can identify magic effects or spells that you see being cast that has certain traits. The list of traits here are mental, fortune, misfortune, detection, prediction, revelation, scrying. These are traits that fit very well with Occultism, that kind of fit the theme. You also get a +2 circumstance bonus to identify magic or recall knowledge about things when you use occultism to do so. Honestly, being able to get a +2 bonus to recall knowledge if you're that player is really solid. So oddity identification can be really potent if you want to play that role. Quick identification. This has come up before. Level 1 trained. Takes 1 minute to identify magic rather than 10 minutes. Straightforward. Read psychometric resonance. Uncommon, level 1, trained. This is an exploration ability that lets you feel emotionally significant objects nearby. I know that's kind of hand-wavy, but if you pick this up, work with your GM, make it valuable. You also gain a special 1-minute activity. If you're holding an object of great emotional significance, you can get an image of the person that imbued it with such emotion, potentially taking 1d6 mental damage if it's particularly painful emotions that got tied in there, but it can be a cool way to do like a plot hook moment or to hunt down somebody you're trying to find in a good or bad sense, right? It could be that the emotional weight laid into the object is from a child who was torn from their parents and this is their toy. You can find the child to rescue the child. Or it could be some, a knife that somebody used with extreme hatred to cause pain and kill, and that could instead find the killer. Lots of cool ways to use this. Again, talk with the GM. It's really critical in this game. It could be a very fun skill to pick up. Recognize spell. Again, we've talked about it before. Level 1, trained reaction. Secret check is made to see if you recognize the spell that was cast. You have guaranteed success for level 2 spells and lower. Pretty standard stuff here, but still really useful. So don't let it go if you're going to be facing off against a lot of spellcasters. Root magic. Level 1, train. You create a pouch of ritual ingredients and hand it to an ally during daily preparations. The first save the ally makes, they get a +1 to that save, or a +2 if you're expert, and a +3 if you're legendary in occultism. I mean, nice to just be able to hand off a nice buff to an ally to get a save in, especially against some really brutal effects out there. So this is just useful every day. Schooled in secrets. Level 1, trained. You can use occultism to gather information about groups like cults and secret societies, and you can use occultism instead of deception to pretend to be a member of those. So I know we saw something very similar up above. This is an all-inclusive one that's not uncommon, so easy to pick up. Very cool. Very useful in certain campaigns. Trick magic item. Standard one we see, level 1, trained. You roll to see if you can use a magic item that normally wouldn't be of use to you. Something that doesn't fit into the categories of what you're allowed to use. We see this a lot. Can be useful as you're just kind of picking up magic items as you go. Assured identification. Another one that goes across all the different knowledge skills. Level 2, expert. If you fail to identify magic, then you get a fail. If you critically fail to identify magic, you get a fail instead. Also, curse items that normally identify when you get less than a success, you are now identified on a success. So nothing crazy here. We've seen it before. Aura sight. Uncommon, level 2, expert. If you concentrate on studying a living creature for at least 1 minute, you gain info about its attitude towards you, current emotional state, and its physical health, including any afflictions and things like that. You can even learn if they are deceiving you, as the GM does a secret roll to find out if you get to find that out or not. So, interesting way to gain information outside of combat, especially if you're setting up for something you think it's somebody you're going to deal with later on. Automatic writing. Uncommon. Level 1 requires expert. Level 2 requires expert. This is once per day. You spend 10 minutes writing, but you aren't controlling the pen. You make a recall knowledge check using a lore you aren't trained in, and you can use occultism instead. After this is complete, you are stupefied 1 for 10 minutes. So this is an out-of-combat thing, but if there's something that you don't know much about, this lets you use a specific lore. Now, why does that matter? Well, if there is a subject, and let's say, okay, maybe it fits Arcana, but if you have a specific lore about whatever this is, then that usually reduces the DC significantly, and then you're using occultism to make the check, which means you might learn a ton about the subject. This doesn't sound particularly strong when I read it out loud, but again, this is one of those things where you could gain a ton of information before having to deal with something, before even showing up in combat, about what you're about to face, and could help set up the party for a win. Magical Shorthand, level 1, expert, lets you learn any level of spell in 10 minutes. So we see this before, it's come across. This is for occultism magic. Great. Bizarre Magic, level 7, master. You increase the DC for others to identify your spells and magic by 5. Which, when it comes into the whole identifying and counteracting and all that, there's a very complex system there. But this does make it way harder for others to identify stuff you've cast. So if that's a worry you have, this is a good way to deal with it. Break Curse, level 7, requires master. You spend 8 hours trying to break a curse. At the end, you make an occultism check to see if you counteract it, and with half your level added to the check. Only 10 minutes, though, to do this if you're legendary, which is a huge change. 8 hours to 10 minutes is kind of nuts. So if you are dealing with cursed items, this can be very, very useful. Consult the Spirits, level 7, requires master. We saw this with nature, so we're seeing it again here. This isn't for every single magic, but it is for those two at least. And we'll have another one coming up. Once per day, or once per hour if you're legendary, you can make a check against a high DC of your level to consult spirits about the natural environment around you. And this is, this isn't just the natural environment now, because we're occultism, we're talking about other things like haunts and things like that. Very cool, and a different use of it than we see with nature. Disturbing Knowledge, level 7, master, requires 2 actions, so we're talking an in-combat thing here. You mutter horrible secrets and incantations, making an occultism check against the will DC of a creature within 30 feet. So you're going to choose a creature. Great. Going to go after them. On a crit success, it becomes both Frightened 1 and Confused. Frightened 1 alone on a success, and then on a fail, nothing happens. And on a crit fail, you instead become Frightened 1. You've scared yourself. If you are legendary, instead you get to target as many creatures as you want within 30 feet of you. Any creature you use this against is immune for 24 hours. So at legendary, this really can go off. Even just getting 1 to be Frightened 1 and Confused is crazy, which would be amazing as you're, level 15. And finally, Quick Recognition. Level 7 requires master. Once per round, you can use occultism to identify a spell as a free action. So again, if you're in a campaign with a lot of spellcasters, this can be great. Occultism still leans into exploration and downtime, at least other than Disturbing Knowledge, which is a cool combat utility activity you get to use for 2 actions. The classes that easily take advantage of occultism, thanks to it being an intelligence skill, alchemists, inventors, investigators, witches, wizards, and then certain psychics and rogues. But also, there's a cool play here for characters like a magus. Bards, animists, certain witches, and sorcerers all get trained in occultism at level 1, just for free. So even though they aren't themselves, and except for witches, of course, they aren't themselves intelligence-based, they still just get occultism, and it could be a nice, if you're looking for a secondary skill to raise up, this could be a nice one to do. If you're into the idea that getting caught up in the unexplained, or knowing what should not be known, this just might play into your character really well, right? This might be what you're looking for. You want to be the one who knows about all the crazy, weird stuff in the world. For GMs, mostly just be careful of the DCs. There are a lot of GM-dependent things going on here, just like we see with the other intelligence and, the other magic-related skills. If you have a player that's interested in playing this, just make sure that you do offer up the downtime needed for downtime activities, and more importantly for occultism, the exploration stuff to come up, right? Make it so that they want to use their occultism, make it so they're identifying cool writings, or that they're able to research things that others wouldn't know about, or depending on what skill feats they are, lean into those skill feats. It doesn't have to alter your campaign, just make it so that they're able to gain knowledge, because that's a lot of what's going on here, in very interesting ways that others just simply don't have the option to do. With that, time for me to fail deciphering some ancient texts, while you consider what slightly creepy character you want to play next, and as always, adventure on.